Hi, my name is Elias VanLoo, and I will be speaking in negation of today's motion. For America, the choice is clear. We choose hope over fear. We see the future not as something out of our control, but as something we can shape for the better through concerted and collective effort. We reject fatalism or cynicism when it comes to human affairs. We choose to work for the world as it should be, as our children deserve it to be. That's a quote from President Obama in the United Nations General Assembly, but this quote is the exact problem with American foreign policy ideology. The belief that America's responsibility is to work for the world as it should be causes more harm than good, and I therefore stand in negation of the motion the United States has done more good than harm in pursuing its foreign policy objectives in the 21st century. America's ideology in foreign policy was majorly defined after the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. This marked the point in which America had a major victory with promoting democracy, and thus the United States became a strongly established world superpower. America then adopted a foreign policy strongly rooted in hegemonic ideals. Asserting ourselves as a major player in the multipolar playing field did not cause too much harm from the 1980s up until the 21st century. Yet when the tragic events of 9/11 took place, America was forced to take action in order to keep the hegemony that took years to create. The war on terror, the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, and the general ideology of American hegemony has caused more harm than good in the United States' foreign policy objectives. The term war on terror was first used by President George W. Bush in 2001. Since then, the United States has invaded Afghanistan in 2001, Iraq in 2003, Pakistan in 2004, and many other military operations in other Middle Eastern countries since. The Congressional Budget Office reported that in 2007, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan could cost taxpayers a total of $2.4 trillion by 2017. But Americans have already paid enough. According to the United States Department of Defense, the war on terror has cost Americans over 9,000 deaths and 55,000 wounded, and over 200,000 diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, viewing this from cost-benefit analysis, we have seen the costs, but what are the benefits? According to official reports by the Department of Defense, 11 terrorist attacks have been stopped by the war on terror. And although on the surface this seems beneficial, and it is, research points to the notion that terrorism has actually increased since the war on terror began. The National Consortium for Study of Terrorism and Responses to Terrorism, or START, has shown that the number of terrorist attacks was steadily decreasing from 1992 to 2004. But then terrorism skyrocketed to points never before seen following the war on terror. Extensive research points to the fact that the United States, as it intervenes militarily, civilians die, which sparks anti-American sentiment. And civilians take up arms to protest America and its intervention, all the while America is attempting to spread democracy to the very countries who do not want it. These foreign operations of attempting to spread democracy through hegemonic ideals leads me to my second point, and it leads harm within the governmental systems themselves. Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi was deemed unfit for ruling the country by a group of rebels within Libya. These rebels cried out for help, and eventually NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, intervened through overseeing the uprising and overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi. The United States is a cornerstone and arguably the military powerhouse of NATO, and the decision to assist in the uprising was a crucial point of the United States' foreign policy objectives. But the harm that it caused was not worth the supposed democracy spread. When NATO bombed the convoy in which Muammar Gaddafi was escaping, the support was shown and success was gained for the young group of rebels who overthrew Muammar Gaddafi. But the United States created a power vacuum within Libya itself. A power vacuum is defined as when someone has lost control of something and no one has replaced them. This is caused when a leader of a country is removed from power by internal or external forces, and when a government has no identifiable central power or authority. The physical analogy suggests that in a power vacuum, other forces will tend to rush in to fill in the vacuum as soon as it is created, perhaps in the form of an armed militia or insurgents, a military coup, warlord, or dictator. As the vacant spot for a leader is now attempted to be filled with too many forces, it creates much more harm than good. The three main harms of power vacuums are war, within the nation itself, and between other countries fighting for control of the nation, or corrupt leaders being put in place within the nation simply for the need of an authority figure. And lastly, foreign countries gain control of the nation in power vacuums, which can cause harm to traditional values and cultural norms. In the case of Libya, the power vacuum led to a militarized country that quickly became war-torn, in debt, and riddled with death. These attempts of America spreading democracy as the world police, we can see that the ideology of American foreign policy leads to the creation of hate inside and outside the country. Inside our own country, the continued endeavors of the War on Terror creates Islamophobia and anti-American sentiments. This creates victims of hate crimes and a large group of persecuted individuals within the United States. The anti-Islamic sentiments only fuel the aforementioned anti-American sentiments that creates and fuels terrorism. These extreme ideologies are met with excessive force that only creates more extremist groups. For example, the Islamic State of the Levant, or ISIL, commonly known as ISIS, has been fueled by Islamophobia and the modern ideologies that America stands for. Yet when we threaten to use military force, the Islamic State welcomes the expected force and notes that it will only grow larger and more powerful. Therefore, when we are creating the very hate groups that we spend money and lives trying to defeat, how can we say honestly that American foreign policy objectives cause more good than harm? In conclusion, although President Obama attempts to choose hope over fear in Americans' foreign policy, Americans themselves are plagued with fear for the very extremist groups that we create. The war on terror has taken lives of thousands of Americans, wounded thousands more, and takes exuberant amount of taxpayers' dollars. Attempting to spread democracy very easily backfires on the United States by creating things like power vacuums, and fueling and creating the very extremist groups who wish to destroy what America stands for. America, too long, has stood for being a world superpower and spreading democracy as this world police. Yet as we can see through empirical evidence and studies and research and with our own hearts, this does cause more harm than good. Therefore, I stand in negation of the motion. The United States has done more good than harm in pursuing its foreign policy objectives in the 21st century. Thank you.